I'm Troy Thompson. Over the last 15 years, our family has worked hard to create a place we call the center of the universe. A place where our kids and someday our grandkids can come home to and laugh, have fun, learn how to work, pray, worship God, and be a place to celebrate life with all our friends. After a quarter century in uniform, I put away one set of boots for another, working on our acreage, improving the land, fixing some structures, and building new ones. We say, give back to the community, be useful, keep your hands calloused, and spread the gospel. This is a little place in a little state right in the middle of flyover country, from which cries out a voice in the wilderness to all who might want to listen, learn, and laugh along with us. This is our American dream. Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to Sunnyside. I hope that you had a fantastic, fun-filled, explosive-filled, fireworks-filled, friendly 4th of July. There's a lot of F's involved with that, but I think that that's what we all wanted, was a celebratory experience over the independence of the United States of America, and I hope you had a great time. I did. It was great to spend time with our friends. We set off some explosives here at Sunnyside, known as fireworks, just to make everybody somewhat more calm. And it was great. It was lots of fun. Good gathering. Had a bonfire. Shared some stories over snacks and drinks and good times and beautiful weather. It had rained a good portion of the day, good heavy rain, but then it cleared off and we were able to do our little exhibition of explosives there. I'm really into the alliteration today. Well, hopefully that'll stop. We'll find out. Anyway, that was great. That was a good time. I hope that we spent some time on the boat with some friends as well. And that's something that we've been doing for actually quite some time, is many years, going out on the boat out at Clear Lake and just spending the day together, tubing around. I don't tube around. I just kind of boat around and talk to the guys and the gals, and we have a great time. And it's something that the kids have been doing since they were very, very little, and now they're all grown up. And anyway, lots of fun. And yeah, but that we didn't do that actually on the 4th of July. We did that over the weekend. So I hope that you also had a great, great time. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about today, since you're here with me again. I appreciate that. As you know, if you've been listening to the Bible in a Year, and I hope you are, because, again, listen, you can jump in wherever you want. You can start at the very beginning and follow through it. I don't think it's a bad thing to know every verse and chapter of the entire Bible. I think that's a good thing. It's been a good thing for me, so hopefully you'll find the time to do that as well. Every day we put out here on the Sunny Side of Life a couple, 2, 3, 4 chapters, depending on what book we're in, and you can listen to it for free. It might be 6 minutes long. It might be 30 minutes long. It just depends on how long-winded those writers of those particular books in the Bible actually decided that they needed to be. But that's how you get through the Bible in a year. And so in 365 days, you will have listened to it via me, reading it to you. Because, I mean, that's one way to get through it. And hopefully it's a useful way, and we'll continue to do it. And the great thing is because it's recorded, you can come back and listen to it over and over again for free. Why wouldn't you want that as a part of your life? So it's not really a sales pitch. It's more an appeal to take advantage of, I don't know, the Word of God. And we're still in the Old Testament. Right now, we're in the book of Proverbs. And as I recorded this a while ago, I couldn't help but start thinking about our presidential election. And wouldn't it be great if Solomon, who is, I guess, for the most part, the author of the Proverbs that are in the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament of the Bible, King Solomon, wouldn't it be great if King Solomon could just provide this advice to our presidential candidates and to our media and, well, to you and me. And, of course, he can, because it's recorded permanently in the book of Proverbs. And so you can just crack open the Bible and look in the book of Proverbs, because the Proverbs are for everybody. They are for everybody. Now, Solomon was instructing his people. He was instructing his sons, of which he had many, because he had many, 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 many wives. So you question his wisdom in some cases regarding that. But he was giving this sage advice to his people, to his loved ones, to the members of his court, to the members of other courts that come from other countries to visit him, like the Queen of Sheba did. And he was giving this wise advice, credited as being the wisest man in history. And so I think it's important to sit down and just go through. It just struck me as I was reading through it, I was like, man, I really think that Joe Biden should hear this, or Donald Trump would probably benefit from listening to this proverb, or the media should probably pay attention to this. Now, here's something about the Proverbs, that they're very short statements of truth based on a common understanding of how things work and how things are supposed to work. So they don't get into a whole lot of deep. Well, I guess they can be deep, but they don't get into like a lot of deep theology. They're not laying down the law, which was already, understood as the book of Moses. And so it's assuming that everybody that hears the book of Proverbs, that hears a single proverb for that matter, already understands that there is a God, and B, you better pay attention to God and God's intentions, and that you'll have a good life if you do those things. If you don't follow those things, if you don't believe that there is a God, and you don't believe that there are rules and regulations to being a servant of God, then this is going to strike you dumb. Like it's not going to mean as much to you, because it just sounds like wise, common sense words, but maybe not, because I have my own truth, which is not a thing. Your truth doesn't exist. It's not real. There is one truth, and the Proverbs help reveal them. But it's also an example of a person who had ruled a kingdom very successfully for a long time, and had learned a lot. And so, like, these are the things that would be helpful to write down and pay attention to. So we think that the modern leaders of the world it's such a different world we live in, because just things are different, because we have TVs and phones, or whatever our rationale is. Because of technology, our world is different, as if the human heart has changed. It has not. And people have changed. They have not. And sin has somehow evolved. It has not. None of those things have changed. But we like to think that it has. And so maybe there isn't any wisdom in these old proverbs for a president of the United States or any leader of any nation. And I would argue to differ. And so, reading through them, I started making notes, and I put this together for you, and I thought we would just go through them one by one and talk about, hey, this is some advice for the different folks in our election. And understanding that if I picked one and you are sitting there, you're going, well, you could use that for, if I say this for Biden and I don't say it for Trump, it obviously could apply to both. I have a category for both, and every proverb applies to everyone. So just relax. Whether I categorized it correctly, I cannot say. Let's start, though, with the story of how the Proverbs existed and what they're for. Right at the very beginning of the book of Proverbs, it says, "These are the Proverbs of Solomon, David's son, king of Israel. Their purpose is to teach people wisdom and discipline, to help them understand the insights of the wise. Their purpose is to teach people to live disciplined and successful lives, and to help them do what is right, just, and fair. These Proverbs will give insight to the simple, knowledge and discernment to the young." They'll give insight to the simple, knowledge and discernment to the young. And let the wise listen to these proverbs and become even wiser. Let those with understanding receive guidance. Proverbs 1, chapter 1 through 5. And so that's what Proverbs, in the stated purpose of the Proverbs, are. And so, how about this? It's just to teach people to live disciplined and successful lives. We do not like discipline, and yet we love success. And sometimes I think we wonder, why don't I have success? You have no discipline. And to help people do what is right, just, and fair. We all want people to do right by us. We want justice. We put justice after every noun anymore. It's environmental justice. It's justice. It's whatever justice we invented in college this week, or whatever it happens to be. But we don't usually turn that justice around on us, which is where we get into consequential situations with God. God is just. Look out, we're in trouble, because God is just and fair. And so these are all things that are understood by the authors of Proverbs, most of which were taken from the wisdom of King Solomon. So a little bit about King Solomon. And this, by the way, when we're reading that in the Bible, and your stuff is all from the New Living Translation, which I really like. And you can choose any translation you want. And so it's the most common language, the easiest one to understand for a lot of people. There's some great arguments for the King James Version. Hey, I'm with you. That's wonderful. But I also want to reach as many people as I can and not talk like Shakespeare all the time. So there's a new King James Version that takes care of that. I know, I get it. But anyway, so we're using from the NLV, and this is the study Bible. And if you got a good study Bible, it's very beneficial. And so just a little profile on King Solomon. He's the third king of Israel. He's David's chosen heir to the throne. And actually, if you jump back to 1 Kings, when King David dies, King David is the man after God's own heart who replaced Saul, the first king of Israel, and has established the line of David, which is where Jesus Christ comes from. So big deal if you're not familiar with who King David is. David's the father of Solomon, who is the son of Bathsheba, right? His wife that he married after having an affair with her and sending her husband off to the front lines to meet his certain death, which he did, Uriah was one of his 30 greatest warriors. So that was what David was all about. It wasn't what he was all about, but he did do that. And from that situation came Solomon. And here's what David told Solomon on his deathbed. He says, I am going where, this is 1 Kings chapter 2, 1 through, well, we'll just see where we stop here. But King David says, I'm going where everyone on earth must someday go. Take courage and be a man. Observe the requirements of the Lord your God and follow all his ways. Keep the decrees, commands, regulations, and laws written in the law of Moses, so that you will be successful in all you do and wherever you go. Imagine, by the way, if this is what each passing president, I don't mean on their deathbed, but just as they left the Oval Office in our peaceful transition of power, regardless of which party was in charge. Imagine if these were the words, or similar to these words, to each from one president having had the experience of leading this nation and turning it over to the incoming president. If these same words that David gave to his son Solomon, wouldn't that be great? If you do this, he says, then the Lord will keep the promise he made to me. He told me, if your descendants live as they should and follow me faithfully with all their heart and soul, one of them will always sit on the throne of Israel. Would that be pretty cool? It doesn't really have anything to do with Israel, in our case, in the United States of America. But wouldn't it be cool if we could guarantee a peaceful transition of power if we had that heart and soul for God? But that requires the entire nation to have a heart and soul for God. In the last weekend over 4th of July, we say a lot of things. One of the things that you hear politicians say, and I think we say it, and we even sing it, and it's God bless America. And God has blessed America, but that is up to God to do that. And by the way, we don't deserve it. So I don't know why God would bless America. I would argue that most of America is not working every day to follow the laws, regulations, decrees of God. They're not working to be a servant of Christ or to be Christ-like in any way. So I'm not sure how we get those blessings. We certainly don't deserve them anyway. And so, but we can ask. We should ask ourselves, what do we do to even have the audacity to ask God for a blessing? And yet we pray for it, and I think that's a good thing. But wouldn't it be cool if our nation's leaders also did this as they handed off power peacefully to one another, which is going to happen in the next 6 months. Now it's July. in January, someone is going to be the president of the United States. Who will it be? We don't know, and I guess we'll find out. It could be the same guy that we've got. It could be a replacement for that guy, or it could be it could be the guy from the other party. It could be. So who knows who it happens to be? We can't predict the future, but it'll be interesting regardless. And hopefully these people will listen to what we have to say. Now, interestingly enough, just a little quick sidebar. After David had given Solomon, his son, these instructions before he died about how to be a good king, if you do these things, then we'll be able to always sit on the throne of Israel as a family. And they do, obviously. Jesus, through the line of David, is the ultimate king of the world. And so here you have that promise made true. However, David also goes on, and this is part of the interesting part of the Old Testament, like immediately after saying these wonderful things about how you must follow the laws, regulations, and so forth of Moses, and have a faithful heart. And he goes, oh, and by the way, there's something else. This is from immediately chapter 2, verse 5 and on. He's like, you know that Joab, son of Zeruiah, you know what he did to me when he murdered my 2 army commanders. And then he goes on. So do with him, he tells Solomon, do with him what you think best, but don't let him grow old and go to his grave in peace. And but then he did. So he's like, kill this guy, but be kind to Barzillai of Gilead, and make him permanent guest at your table, because they took care of David when he had to run away from his own son Absalom. But then another one. Remember that guy who made fun of me on my way out of town, and he was heckling me, and I was like, oh, I forgive him. Nope, his name is Shimei or whatever, and then so David, like on his deathbed, this is his final words. Essentially, he's going through a list of people that he also has to settle his pet peeves with. So. He tells Solomon, when he came down to meet me at the Jordan River, I swore by the Lord that I would not kill him. And then he's like, but that oath does not make him innocent. No, you are a wise man, he tells Solomon, and you will know how to arrange a bloody death for him. And then David died. So, I mean, I hope that is not the type of thing that comes on somebody's deathbed, but that's how David was, I guess, and that's what Solomon. That's a different way of looking at it. Listen, follow the regulations of the Lord your God. And that'll make you a wise king. Okay. Also, listen, there's a couple guys I want you to take care of for me, because I'm not going to be able to do it. And so very Tony Soprano-ish in that regard. So he's the third. So Solomon's the third king of Israel. David's heir to the throne. He's the wisest man who ever lived. He is the author of Ecclesiastes and the Song of Songs, which we have not yet gotten to, but are coming up next after Proverbs, as well as many of the Proverbs and a couple of the Psalms as well. This is all things that Solomon did. He did build God's temple in Jerusalem, built that on the preparations made for him and for it with the help of his dad, King David. He was a diplomat, a trader, a collector, and a patron of the arts. This is all according from the notes in the profile on Solomon in 1 Kings, page 519 in that New Living Translation that I was talking about for the study Bible. But diplomat, trader, collector, and patron of the arts. It's easier to be a patron of the arts, I feel, when your kingdom is at peace, right? People got more time for the arts when they're not out murdering each other. So that's a good signal that if the arts are doing well, then you're probably not spending a lot of time getting murdered or murdering other people. So he also sealed many foreign agreements, unfortunately, by marrying pagan women. There's a lot of Proverbs. We don't really get into it in what we're going to talk about today, but there's a lot of Proverbs in there where it's pretty clear Solomon is like, listen, some of these women are married. This is a mistake, and did it, he married lots of ladies in order to, establish peace and trade with other nations. And so he had 1,000 wives? I don't know, too many, and many concubines on top of that. The guy was not. I will say this: Solomon was not negotiating a whole lot for any action. I guess that's the advantage of being the king. It's good to be the king, and to quote Mel Brooks. So he had lots of women, but he let all these women come in, and they had all of their pagan rituals and their religions. And women have an effect on men. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it's true. And so it did sway King Solomon, who's supposedly the wisest man in the history of the world, but he was swayed by his wives, and that caused a variety of problems. So that was an issue and wasn't intended, or maybe it was intended, I guess, but that was a problem. He allowed his wives to affect his loyalty to God ultimately, and then also Solomon really liked to tax his people. Like, he did all these things, he built all these things, he was a patron of the arts, he lived in an incredible palace, and he taxed the heck out of his people and drafted them into labor forces, and also drafted them into the military. So he was, a wise king. He got things done, but not particularly loved by his people. And then he's an example of, according to these notes, how effective leadership can be nullified by an ineffective personal life. Is that true? Can we apply that to America today or any time in history? I believe we can. Effective leadership, you can be a great leader. You can really have your organization figured out. And you can be, at the end of the day, your house is not in order. Your personal life is a mess. You are a mess. And it can just nullify everything else you do. But it's like, I can separate my personal life from my work life. And the Bible's like, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Solomon ultimately, he did fail to obey God. So he didn't follow through with his father's instructions on David's deathbed, but he did not learn about repentance. He didn't learn the lesson and the value of repentance until late in life. And I would say that's the same thing for most of us, most Americans, most people around the world. Just don't get around to that repentance thing on a regular basis. So knowing what actions are required of us means little, according to our study of Solomon, without the will to do those actions. It doesn't matter how much you know. If you don't put it into action for good, then it's a waste of time. It doesn't matter. So here are the Proverbs that I picked out, and this is going to apply for all candidates running for office, particularly the office of President of the United States, but really, you could be running for the local school board, and I know people use the term dog catcher, but I don't think that's an elected thing. I think that's an appointed thing. So you could be running for the local school board, or you can run for the President of the United States, and here's some of the Proverbs that apply. Of course, they all do, but here's some that I thought were especially apropos. So from 8:13, Proverbs 8:13 says, "All who fear the Lord will hate evil. Therefore, I hate pride and arrogance, corruption and perverse speech." In this chapter, wisdom is talking. They're assuming the voice of wisdom. And so that is wisdom that is saying, all who fear the Lord will hate evil. Therefore, I, wisdom, hate pride and arrogance, corruption and perverse speech. What we say matters, and how we say it matters. And I am as guilty as anybody. I've been a soldier and in construction and just, various other life experiences. These are my excuses. They're not excuses. They don't work. But my speech can be rough and salty, and has been. And I try to not do that. I definitely don't do that on this show. And there's a reason for that. I'm trying to put my best foot forward. I have sworn many times in my life, and I'm ashamed of that, and forgive me for that. Perverse speech shows a perverse heart. So what comes out of your mouth, the trash that comes out of our mouths, is just indicative of where our hearts are that moment. And some of it's pretty corrupt, pretty nasty. And also, perverse speech can be just sharing perverse ideas, things that go against God. And so if you're in a leadership role, the things that we talk about that comes from our speech does matter. And obviously corruption is not good. And arrogance and pride seem to go hand in hand. And there's a lot of that in politics. So I thought that applies in general to any candidate. For all the candidates, from the same chapter, 8, verses 15 and 16, wisdom continues talking and says, "Because of me, kings reign, and rulers make just decrees. Rulers lead with my help, and nobles make righteous judgments." There you go. If you have wisdom, folks, and you're a leader and you're a candidate for office, then understand it's because of wisdom that kings reign and rulers make just decrees, and so on and so forth. From chapter 10, verse 9, for all the candidates, people with integrity walk safely, but those who follow crooked paths will be exposed. Yes, let's hope so. Whoever they are, I don't care who your candidate is. If you have integrity, and I mean, that is such a huge question, because I hate to be pessimistic, but it's hard for me to truly state that I can look across the board and say there's a lot of integrity out there in the political field. That people with integrity, they're okay. But those who follow crooked paths will be exposed. I hope so. Let's expose it all. And sometimes the light is like a sanitizer, and so we'll just expose these things to the light, and the crooked paths will be exposed. And you can also, by the way, you can follow a crooked path, and then you can repent from doing that, and then you can be on the straight path after that, and then you can be forgiven, obviously. So it's good for people to walk with integrity, to walk safely. But if you're following a crooked path currently, you need to stop that. And your crooked path is still going to be exposed, So from chapter 11, verse 14, for all the candidates, some advice to you is, without wise leadership, a nation fails. There is safety in having many advisors. I think there's enough said there. You got enough advisors, wise people, not just yes men or women or whatever it happens to be, or sycophants, people that there can give you wise advice. Then you can provide wise leadership and your nation won't fail. Wouldn't that be nice? Chapter 15, verse 22, this is for all the candidates. Here's a psalm that says, plans go wrong for lack of advice, and many advisors bring success. So it goes hand in hand with the one that I just read from 11:14. 15:22 is very much the same. Chapter 14, verse 9, fools make fun of guilt, but the godly acknowledge it, and they seek reconciliation. So we're in a situation where we have two presidential candidates, well, however many there are, but you have two presidential candidates potentially at the top of the ticket, and both of them make fun of each other's guilt, or maybe in Trump's case, his own guilt. But the thing to do is to acknowledge guilt and to seek reconciliation. That I just don't see that happening from either one of these people, these men. Which is an indication of being foolish. And so fools make fun of guilt, but the godly acknowledge it and seek reconciliation. And to go around and for either of these men, they're incredibly proud human beings. And obviously that's a defect, in my opinion, but they do so in a way that makes it very hard for them to acknowledge that they've ever screwed up anything, that they're guilty of anything. And Solomon would say, listen, I'm a better ruler than you, and I should let you know fools make fun of guilt, but the godly acknowledge it and seek reconciliation. Good luck with that, America. 15:23, for all the candidates, everyone enjoys a fitting reply. It is wonderful to say the right thing at the right time. That's right. There. Isn't that true? Good advice, simple common sense. Everyone enjoys a fitting reply. It is wonderful to say the right thing at the right time. That's for all the candidates. Solomon says in 16:3, commit your actions to the Lord and your plans will succeed. So if we just put the Lord before everything we do, your plans will succeed. That's a pretty cool idea. I don't think that's how we're doing business right now. Chapter 16:8, staying in that same chapter, for all the candidates, better to have little with godliness than to be rich and dishonest. Listen, guys, it's better, according to Solomon, who had amazing wealth and a wealth of wisdom, which you don't have. It is better, he's telling you, it's better to have little, just a tiny little bit, with godliness than to be rich and dishonest. This applies to all candidates, and certainly the top two at the ticket. Who cares if you're rich or you want to be rich? If you're dishonest, which they are, then you're pursuing the wrong thing, buddy. From the same chapter, 16:23, from a wise mind comes wise speech. The words of the wise are persuasive. And Americans, we have our moments when we're stupid, but we're not stupid all the time. And we can tell when we're hearing wisdom. You know who's not providing this? This would be I don't have a category for Vice President Harris, but from a wise mind comes wise speech. I mean, come on. That's never going to happen. The words of the wise are persuasive. And both of our, whether it's Trump or Biden, it's very difficult to get them to say things that are consistently full of wisdom and that are ultimately persuasive. So that's to their disadvantage, in my opinion. But they can fix that. It would be great to listen to debates, if we ever have any again, or just quotes from press junkets or whatever it happens to be, from our political leaders. They're spouting wisdom for once that is valuable and worthwhile, and not just sound bites. Anyway, good luck with that, right? So here's one from chapter 18, verse 7. The mouths of fools are their ruin. They trap themselves with their lips. A lot of times, and it's getting worse, because in the past, and President Biden's a good example of this. He started running for Senate when he was like 29 years old, and he got elected to the Senate when he wasn't even technically 30, and you have to be 30. But he was like from a very early age in the U.S. Senate, and he's been telling the same made up bunk stories about his life growing up, things his dad says, corn pop, blah 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 blah. He've been doing this. So these politicians that have been around, and he's not the only one. He's just the most prevalent example because he's president of the United States. These folks that have been around for 40 or 50 years in public service, quote unquote. They started at a time where you could just kind of say stuff, and there's a good chance people they're not gonna really able to find out, or at least if they do find out, they won't be able to correct you on it or call you out on it immediately. So Joe Biden could say, I was the top of my class in law school, blah, 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 full scholarship, blah, doo, doo, doo. And he could just say that with a straight face, like in a way that you think he was going to get in a fight with the person because of how smart he was trying to present himself to be. And at that time, nobody's like, well, I mean, we don't have your transcripts. We'll have to contact the school. We don't really have a way of validating that. And so he has existed in a world where nobody could really quickly come up with proof that you were lying, which worked very well for him. Even when he ran for president the first time, he stole speeches completely, word for word. But it's like from a foreign guy, like from somebody over in the United Kingdom, some parliamentarian over there or whatever. And then like, he'll never figure this out. And then, of course, they did. And back when the media did their job, and they did figure it out. And that was the end of his first run for president back in the late 80s and whatnot. So he's been desperate to be president for a long time. Unfortunately for him, it turned against him. His own mind turned against him. And so he's telling the same stories in an era where things are readily available at the fingertips of everybody with a smartphone, which is everyone. And so when he tells his own lips trap himself. And the same thing for Trump, too. He just hasn't been in politics as long. And we have a whole category of Proverbs for him, too. So the mouths of fools are their ruin. They trap themselves with their lips, especially in today's day and age. But imagine in King Solomon's time, he's like, truth will find you out. Don't worry about it. If you heard that as you're walking out from the court of King Solomon, after you've just told a fib to the king, and he's just like, just remember, the mouths of fools are their ruin. They trap themselves. Well, they trap themselves with their lips. You'll be like, oh, dang it. He's going to find out. Maybe not as immediately as we can today. And so the last one for all the candidates that I decided to pick as from same chapter, 18:22, the man who finds a wife finds a treasure, and he receives favor from the Lord. And both of these top two presidential candidates have been married more than once. And obviously you can say that they've both found treasure in their current wives. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't know how Mrs. Trump, I don't know how she holds up to the pressure, but she does a good job, I think. And obviously, I think Mrs. Biden does a pretty good job taking care of her husband. Nobody can disagree with that, unless you look at it like elder abuse, which some people do, and I might be one of those too. But you got to give her credit. The man who finds a wife did find a treasure there, and he receives favor from the Lord. That is part to be determined. So for President Biden, since we talked about him, here's some that I thought would apply. And again, I realized they could apply to either candidate, any candidate, etc. But I thought just based on what we kind of know currently, these seemed particularly like they were good for our president, current president, to hear. So from chapter 12, verse 8, this is for President Biden. If Solomon is talking to you, this is what you should hear. He says, a sensible person wins admiration, but a warped mind is despised. Okay. That's a little mean, I know. All right, so chapter 13, verses 24, for President Biden, Solomon would tell him, those who spare the rod of discipline hate their children. Those who love their children care enough to discipline them. Okay, so obviously talking, talking about Hunter there, in case you didn't know that, talking about Hunter Biden. Clearly the Biden family has spared the rod of discipline for their children, and et cetera, et cetera. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's probably too late for you to go back and discipline your children. But Solomon says when we do that, when we spare the rod of discipline for our own children, it's because we hate them. And that if we love our children, we care enough to discipline them. And that is not the society that we live in either. Everybody's like, oh, these children, they're precious little minds. They can decide all kinds of amazing things. They can even decide their gender. And Solomon would be like, schwack. That's not how we do this. So for President Biden, another little tip from Solomon from chapter 17, verse 21, Solomon would say, it is painful to be the parent of a fool. On this tat. Okay. There is no joy for the father of a rebel. And he would know, and now I'm sure that the Bidens know that. I'm sure that President Biden is very much aware that it's very painful to be the parent of a fool, of which he is. He's a parent of a fool. But if he thinks that fool is the smartest person he knows, which makes me question how many people he actually knows. Some of this is pretty hard and biting for Biden, but don't worry, we'll get into Trump. For 1429, this is a chapter jumping back to chapter 14, Solomon would say to President Biden, people with understanding control their anger. A hot temper shows great foolishness. And I put this on Biden's side because it could be on Trump's side. It could be on, remember, Proverbs are for everybody. So they're not for one or, onesie twosie here. They're for all of us. The reason I put this on for Biden is because have you ever just seen so many different times that when President Biden gets challenged, he gets mad and then he gets mean. He's kind of a jerk like that. And he wants to call you fat, or he wants to challenge you to a push-off contest, or he believed that he could fight you back in the corner back in the day. And I don't believe any of that. But that's the kind of person that he is, and his anger gets control of him. He's got a hot temper, and it exposes his foolishness, which is true. And so when he calls somebody a dog, pony, dog warrior, whatever, pony dog, I don't know what he said because it made no sense to me. Or when he called the one guy fat who was asking him, I mean, it's just like he gets mad and then he thinks he's going to fight. He's got the advantage of having a Secret Service around him. He's had the advantage of having private security around him his whole life. The guy has never been a prize fighter, in my opinion. He's no prize. So he wants you to believe that I could knock you out. We could do push-ups. We could do all these things. And it's like, no, you can't. You can't even. Nowadays, it's just sad. But he still possesses that anger. So I say stop that. But it's part of who he is. And drives me crazy. A hot temper shows great foolishness. So the next one for Biden, from chapter 15, verse 27, it says, greed brings grief to the whole family, but those who hate bribes will live. And again, it apply. I realize these apply to all of the candidates and to all of us. But to me, for the Bidens particularly, here's a lifelong just attempt at trying to be what they think a Kennedy is, which isn't that great either. And I think there's no greater dream for Joe Biden than for his family to be like Kennedys in the Democrat Party in the memory of the United States of America. It's not going to happen. Kennedys, I would say wrongfully, are still remembered as this heroic clan of people in the United States. They're kind of more Irish trash, in my opinion, in a lot of the things that they did in their personal life. We could jump back to, talking about what happens in our personal life. No matter how great of a leader you are, your personal life can wreck all of that. And I think that the Kennedys are a perfect example. But I think that Biden admires the Kennedys so much and just so coveted being like that that is what he wants his family to be. And greed, I think that he spends a lot of time helping his family figure out ways to collect on his name. And that brings grief to the whole family. What a sad situation for ultimately for the generations of Bidens that are to come. And the good news, I guess, for Joe is, and this may be mean, but he won't remember that. He's going to pass on from this earth probably a long time from now, but he's not going to be aware of any of these things. So he'll still live in La La Land that he created this Biden-Kennedy type family, and it won't have been true, and it'll bring much grief to the whole family, in my opinion. So take the advice from King Solomon, Joe. Greed brings grief to the whole family, but those who hate bribes will live. From chapter 17. Verse 23 of Proverbs. This is also for Joe Biden. The wicked take secret bribes to pervert the course of justice. Again, right? We just already talked about that. So just really validating that it's there. And the last one for Joe Biden from chapter 17, verse 28. Joe, even fools are thought wise when they keep silent. With their mouths shut, they seem intelligent. That's my best advice for you, buddy, but it might be too late. You let the cat out of the bag when you did the debate and gave that performance. But even fools are thought wise when they keep silent. With their mouths shut, they seem intelligent. That, by the way, could transfer perfectly to the next person, because Trump could do the exact same thing. Shut up sometimes. You'll seem smarter. Not possible for Donald Trump. So here are some Psalms for Donald Trump. As if King Solomon is advising you, any of these presidential candidates or any of these people we're going to talk about, here's what we should do. So Solomon would probably say to Trump from chapter 9, 7, and 8, he'd say, listen, Don, anyone who rebukes a mocker is going to get an insult in return. Anyone who corrects the wicked will get hurt. So don't bother correcting mockers. They will only hate you. But correct the wise, and they will love you. And the reason I put this as for Trump, if it isn't obvious, is because this guy, he loves a fight. He loves it. And he loves arguing over the stupidest things, including golf handicaps. Stupid. And so he loves rebuking mockers. And Solomon's like, why are you wasting your time? But it doesn't matter. He's always rebuking. And what it does is it's just a distraction technique to make it seem like the problem isn't his. And so that is a key thing that Trump does all the time, is he is constantly fighting with the press, little personal things he's had with, whether it's Rosie O'Donnell or just different, whatever his deal. He's got a reason to have a little something to say about with everybody. And that's part of what some people like about him. It's one of the things that drives me nuts. And it would drive Solomon, the wisest person in the world, it would drive him nuts too. And he'd look at Trump and he'd go, what are you doing, buddy? They will only hate you. There's no point in this. But correct the wise, and they will love you. Like, do things that matter when it comes to argumentation. And so, anyway, we started off with that for President Trump. Solomon would also say, I think, from chapter 10, verse 19 to Donald Trump, too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut. You don't really need to improve on that. I would have loved to hear Solomon say that to Donald Trump. And I think Trump would listen, because I've heard that he listens in private, but it's just his public persona where, he's bombastic as that, but maybe he's bombastic. I don't know him. I don't know either of these candidates. I don't know any of them personally. We're not friends. We don't hang out. We don't call each other on the phone. We're not, sending each other Christmas cards. We're not doing any of that stuff. I'm just observing as a constituent out here in the sticks. So, I realize that. You don't know Trump. You don't know the real Joe Biden. Correct. I do not. But neither does, the other 330 million people in the United States. So Also for Trump, Solomon might say from chapter 12, verse 23, the wise don't make a show of their knowledge, but fools broadcast their foolishness. Again, Trump's brand is about, well, it's Trump. It's all about that. And so he broadcasts foolishness. He will broadcast. He is a comedian in many ways. And this is important to understand because Donald Trump is a comedian at heart, and he does great in front of the audience. He doesn't really ever say anything. He gets around to it. He talks around things. He doesn't spend a lot of time studying the details. He's got people for that. So he's a comedian, and comedians do the same thing too. They can really hit on a truth with their humor that really strikes a nerve and makes an impact. But for the most part, they're court jesters. Another name for a court jester is fool, not king. And so there is value to some of the delivery, particularly the comedic stuff. I appreciate that. But it's also, to some degree, it's broadcasting your foolishness. Like you're broadcasting that you just don't have a deep understanding. You're talking around the issues and you're entertaining a crowd. And entertaining a crowd is fun at campaign rallies, but it may not be enough to, keep the United States in order. So anyway, Solomon might say the wise don't make a show of their knowledge, but fools broadcast their foolishness. I'll give you an example on that. It's like when you hear true special operators in the military don't spend a lot of time talking about their special operations in the military. But you can run into a veteran at Walmart, and they will go into great detail explaining how awesome they were in the military, which to me is a big red flag because they're just being foolish. So now another advice for Trump from King Solomon might come from chapter 13, chapter 13, verse 16, where he would say, Donald, wise people think before they act. Fools don't, and even brag about their foolishness. Just think before you act, buddy. Chapter 15, verse 1, another one for Donald Trump. A gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. And I think that Trump would respond to that like, I know, that's why I do it. And Solomon, who's way wiser than any of these candidates that we have running for office in any capacity, would say, no, stop that. A gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. And also from chapter 15, verse 31, Solomon might tell Donald Trump, if you listen to constructive criticism, you will be at home among the wise. And conversely, if you don't, this is me adding to that, obviously, if you don't, you will not be among the wise. So listen to constructive criticism. I think that's it appears his image in the media is that he cannot listen to constructive criticism. If that's not the case, great. It would make him wise. If what the media says is true, he's in trouble. We'll get to the media in just a second here, but one more for Trump. From chapter 17, verse 19, Solomon might say to Donald Trump, anyone who quarrels loves sin. Anyone who trusts in high walls invites disaster. So we have a guy that's running for president who's been president once. He loves arguing, which Solomon says means you love sin. You love arguing so much, you love sin. Anyone who quarrels loves sin. So that puts Donald Trump in a bad light. He's a quarrelsome person. Solomon concludes that same sentence, then, anyone who trusts in high walls invites disaster. So ultimately, what he's saying here is, you'd surround your village or your town with big high walls, and that would protect you from invading armies and whatnot. And of course, human beings made those high walls, and you're not putting your trust in God. That's what it's talking about. But Donald Trump is all about building the wall, and we need security measures for immigration, no doubt. But just, again, these Proverbs may be I say that they're for Trump. They're for all of us. They're for every candidate, and they're for you and for me. If you love to quarrel, you love sin. So stop it, because it'd be better to love God than to love sin. And anyone who trusts in high walls, whether it is, down on the border or whatever, like that'll solve it, you are inviting disaster. And we'll leave it at that as we move on for the media, because let's talk about the media. I think that there wasn't like a free press back in the day with King Solomon whatsoever, but if there were, we would imagine that he would have this advice for the media, starting with from 10:32 in Proverbs. The lips of the godly speak helpful words, but the mouth of the wicked speaks perverse words. And the mouth being the mouthpiece of whether it's you're writing in the papers or you're writing in electronic media or you're on TV, it's perverse. The mouth of the wicked speaks perverse words, but the lips of the godly speak helpful words. Can you think of a media source, of a media personality that is speaking helpful words because they're godly? I'll let you think about that. Also for the media, I think Solomon would say from 11:1 of Proverbs, the Lord detests the use of dishonest scales, but he delights in accurate weights. All right, so that is just fair and balanced. Fox News, we're fair and balanced. And you better be. I don't think you are fair and balanced, by the way. I think you're pursuing, if there's 10 or 4 or 5 media TV show channels over here that are leftist and Fox News is rightist, I don't know what that is, then that's just a marketing scheme. I'm here to provide an echo chamber for this group over here. It would be great if all of the media were truly fair and balanced, but there's just not enough money involved in that. But just be advised, friends in the media and the ones that sell the advertising and make all the decisions in all of these places, the Lord, who is real, by the way, detests the use of your dishonest scales, but he delights in accurate weights. Here's another one that Solomon might let the media know from chapter 15, verse 12. Mockers hate to be corrected, so they stay away from the wise. It's all right to get something wrong if you're in the media, particularly if you've done some due diligence and you were just wrong. You had the wrong information. And upon further review, realize that it was wrong. You can be corrected. And you can print a retraction, or you can make a retraction on air. You can do that. That's allowed. But mockers, if your main focus, if you think you're a journalist, but what you really are is an advocate or a mocker of a particular side, you're not really interested in being corrected, right? You're a pundit. So you stay away from the wise and their practices, right? So avoid doing that. Or Solomon would probably call you out on it. He would also say, from chapter 17, verse 7, he might tell the media, eloquent words are not fitting for a fool. Even less are lies fitting for a ruler. So we have lots of talking heads, 24-hour news cycles. By the way, if you watch that much news or you have news stations on all the time, you need to turn that off. Put your trust in God and quit watching MSNBC or Fox News or whatever it is that you're like. There's no value to you to that. There's nothing all it's going to do is get you mad. And that's because eloquent words aren't fitting for fools, and TV and other forms of media are full of fools. So they're not speaking eloquently, but we'd have lots of folks that they put on TV and on these shows and podcasts included. I realize that they are that are in office and whatnot, and they're telling lies. So it covers the whole thing. If you're watching 24/7 news cycle, stop it, because you're not going to find any eloquent words there from fools that are true, and you're not going to find what you are going to find is lies from rulers, and neither one of those types of words belong in the mouth of those particular categories of people. So for the media also, I think that Solomon would say from chapter 17 as well, verse 15, he would say, acquitting the guilty and condemning the innocent, both are detestable to the Lord. So stop it, media. We get so excited. They get to lead us, the people who view or consume their media delicacies. It's all about finding I'm claiming that person's guilty of this and condemning the people that are innocent of that, and I realize that I've made some allegations here already on this show doing the same thing, and that's detestable to the Lord. Dang it, screwed it up already. For the media, 18 chapter 18, verse 2, fools have no interest in understanding. They only want to air their own opinions. And I get it, because I'm doing a podcast, and that's what I'm doing. I'm airing my own opinions. But if you're pretending to be a journalist, and I'm not a journalist, obviously. So I feel like that's my excuse. Like, I'm just airing my own opinion. And you're listening to it. Thank you, by the way. But if it's a journalist, you went to school for that, you got a really expensive degree, and now you're beating the streets, and you're really impressed with your own prose, you have to do the job for both sides, because nobody cares about your opinion. I want you to report the news as it is, not your opinion, because your opinion is not valid to me. I'll decide. You provide the information, and the audience will decide. You want to steer us with your opinion. You should have an opinion show or a podcast, and or write an editorial. But nobody cares. Just like I don't think anybody cares about my opinion on this. I'm trying to provide some validity, but the reality is, I'm not a journalist. So that's all this is, airing an opinion. For the media as well, I chose 18:8. Rumors are dainty morsels that sink deep into one's heart. Well, that's how you drive the news cycle. What's going on over here? They're dainty little morsels, and it gets you fired up and me fired up, and we talk about them, and it goes in a circle, and then it just disappears for a while, and then what it does is it just wrecks your heart, sinks right down in there, and has no place in there, according to King Solomon. So another one, spouting off before listening to the facts is both shameful and foolish. That's from chapter 18, verse 13 for the media. And the final one for the media from 18, verse 17. The first to speak in court sounds right until the cross-examination begins. And that's the case. It's like we try our people, we try our cases, we do all that and we do it in the media. And the first one that's got an opinion about it comes, can you believe that this happened? Well, that sounds terrible. And then upon further evidence, wait, it wasn't Russian collusion? Dang it. Pretty sure it was. Or whatever it happens to be. So let's get the whole story. That'd be the advice from Solomon for the media. But what about for you and me? For the electorate, the people who do the voting? What can we get for advice from a king who didn't care anything about people voting? That wasn't King Solomon's deal. But he would tell you this from chapter 11, verse 11. 11 is, upright citizens are good for a city and make it prosper, but the talk of the wicked tears it apart. That's for you and me for sure. We're doing our job as citizens. We're upright. We're good. We're going to have a good community. We're going to have a good state. We're going to have a good nation. But the wicked talk tears it apart. There's always wicked talk, but you can just call it what it is and say, that's enough of that wicked talk over there. You're free to say it, but it's wicked, and you're showing your wicked heart. All right. 10:14, Solomon might tell us, wise people treasure knowledge, but the babbling of a fool invites disaster. I hope I'm not babbling like a fool. So hopefully we are a people that respects wisdom and not just fluff. But we have our moments. From chapter 12, verse 24, Solomon might tell the electorate, work hard and become a leader. Be lazy and become a slave. He's got a lot of stuff like that. Here's another one. Lazy people are soon poor. Hard workers get rich. Go to work. Go to work. Be useful. Have you heard that before? He would also say, I suppose, from chapter 14, verse 15, only simpletons believe everything they're told. The prudent carefully consider their steps. So don't believe everything you're told. Don't be a simpleton. Be prudent. Consider your steps, America, as we sort out who it is that we're going to vote for from these spectacular choices that we're provided with. So the chapter 14, verse 34, Solomon might tell you and me, godliness makes a great nation, godliness makes a nation great, but sin is a disgrace to any people, which leads me back to when I said, when we sing God Bless America, well, have you repented for your sins? Has your best buddy, is there any of that going on? Are we godly as a nation? I would say no, we are not. And it's disgraceful to be a nation of sin. And we are just doing everything we possibly can coming out of the month of Pride, whatever that is. It's a disgrace to any people because godliness makes a nation great, according to Solomon, and I happen to agree with that sentiment. Do you? From Solomon, he'll say, chapter 16, verse 4, the Lord has made everything for his own purposes, even the wicked for a day of disaster. So regardless of what side you're on of the political aisle, or whatever that phrase happens to be, the Lord has made all of these things. Look, the Lord made Joe Biden. The Lord made Donald Trump. You may not like either one of those two. The Lord made RFK Jr. The Lord made, all these people. He made you, and Lord made everything. And he's got his own reason for doing it. And you don't know what that is. So it doesn't matter what party you're a part of and how much money you give to their party. It is, and how much you work to go out and get that vote out, which you should do. Your citizen responsibilities to vote. But keep in mind, whoever wins, even if it is who you consider to be wicked, there is a purpose for it that God has in mind. And you'll have to trust in God. So the Lord has made everything for his own purposes, even the wicked, for a day of disaster. And so that was 16:4. From 10:12, Proverbs says, hatred stirs up quarrels, but love makes up for all offenses. And so, all of this fighting with our neighbors, and you're conducting arguments on Facebook in the comments. What's wrong with you? Why are we doing that? They should not be doing that. And it's just it's like... Stop it. Hatred. It just stirs up quarrels, makes love, but love makes up for all the offenses. You're supposed to love your neighbor. Well, that's just, that's what Jesus said. What does he know? So there you have that. And now a couple more here. 11:19, godly people find life, evil people find death. If the electorate understands that, I think that you'll try to be more godly if you want to live. And of course, 16:9 says, we can make our plans, but it is the Lord, but the Lord determines our steps. So it's real cute that we make our plans for who's going to be president and what we're going to do afterwards. In the first 100 days, I'm going to... And it's like, God's like, that's cute to think that. It's the Lord that determines our steps. And the final one, my friends, for the electorate is this. We may throw the dice, but the Lord determines how they fall. So very similar to the one that we just read from 16:9, but a little bit more of a gamble. And that's what we're facing this election as we roll into the fall and in a couple of months, and things are going to heat up, and we don't know what's going to happen in the world. Solomon's advice, we may throw the dice, but the Lord determines how they fall. I think that's a good place to nearly wrap it up. One final thing here on the show.
That's the beauty about being a mailman.
You can mail or text the program, and so that goes into a file called fan mail for me, and so I do get those, and thanks, by the way, for making comments and sending those little texts that's right there. It says the opportunity to contact or text the show. That's where it goes to. It goes into a bin called fan mail, and so from the mailbag, I'll just show you that first from last week discussing the Psalms, and it turns out to be pretty a good story to wrap up this particular show on. The person said, just to let you know, the middle of the Bible halfway through is Psalm 119. Which verse? Check it out and have a wonderful fourth. Thank you very much. And I did check it out, and I did have a wonderful fourth, so I'm gonna. I really wanted to make sure I got this right, so hopefully my research is still accurate. The center of the Bible, without the Apocrypha, is Psalm 118, which is preceded by the shortest psalm in the Bible, which is Psalm 117. And of course, we've already gone through this, and I was talking about Psalm 119 and some of the Psalms situations that I was in last week for last week's show. Psalm 117 is the shortest, and Psalm 119 is the longest. So Psalm 118 is in the middle with 594 chapters before it in the Bible, 594 chapters after it. Now, when we say the Bible, we mean the Bible that you get in your Christian bookstore, and without the Apocrypha, and et cetera, et cetera. So, how important is it? It's one of the sermon things that you would say in a sermon and be like, did you know this is the middle verse and all of that? And I don't put a whole lot of stock in it. It's not numerology, but it is interesting. Let's just leave it at that. It's interesting. The middle psalm is Psalm 118. The middle verse of the Bible is Psalm 118:8. And I think that's what the listener meant to say. It's Psalm 118:8, and what a perfect way. So thank you for this. To end this particular episode about advice to our presidential candidates, the media, and ourselves from King Solomon. It would be the same thing that King Solomon would tell his people and does so throughout the Proverbs, and it would be the same thing that King Solomon's dad told him on his deathbed before he gave him a list of people to murder. And it's this. Psalm 118:8 is, "It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in people." And that is the perfect summation of what we're just trying to say today. Friends, it's that easy. We can argue about who we want to vote for. We can argue about who would be a better president. We can argue about all of these things in politics, but I will tell you this, just like the psalmist says in 118:8, it's better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in people. Whatever pin they're wearing on their lapel or whatever, they're people, and that means they're fallen, and you shouldn't put your trust in them. Put it in the Lord. And with that, I hope you have a proverbial fantastic week this week. We'll see you next week on the sunny side of life, and in the meantime, hope you have the chance to be the sunny side of someone else's life. I want to thank all our friends and guests for stopping by for this episode of The Sunny Side of Life. All the Sunny Side of Life players who stopped by, creative support provided every day by my incredible wife Heidi and our fantastic 4 boys. Thanks to every one of our listeners. That means you. A big shout out to my brothers and sisters in uniform holding the line around the world. Share the word, folks. Let the people know what we're up to. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow us on social media. All skits are written or adapted and directed by me, Troy Thompson, and are produced here at Sunnyside Farm Studios and delivered to all platforms by Buzzsprout. Music and sound effects are provided by Soundstripe. The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. Now, none of this is possible without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life, liberty and pursuits, be in Christ, and made evident unto you each and every day, and give you peace.